Good morning.
Hi, Phyllis.
Good morning.
Dr. Keyes, do you know if anyone else from Morgan is joining, or are you the Morgan rep today?
I'm the Morgan rep today. The provost is not going to be able to join. He has a conflicting meeting.
Understood. I think we're just waiting for someone from St. Mary's. We'll give it just a minute more. Otherwise, we'll get started. Jeff, are you, we didn't talk about this. Do you want to run today's meeting, or should I run today's meeting? You're on mute.
You can run it because I will be switching over to phone shortly.
Okay, great.
Thanks for asking.
No, thank you, Jeff. We should have discussed that probably offline, not in front of everybody else.
Not a problem. You have more items than I do anyway.
Yeah.
Al has 2 items, so.
Great, perfect. Okay, well, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. We do have a few things to discuss, post legislative session and post last week's announcements and the like. I do think so. Allison, I think you're new. You weren't at the January meeting, so I think it might be best if we do a round of introductions, if that's okay. So why don't we start with, let's start with MHEC. So I am Emily Dow. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Academic Affairs. Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself?
Jeff Newman, Assistant Secretary for Finance and Administration.
Great. Al?
Good morning, Al Dorset, Director of Office of Student Financial Assistance.
Debbie?
Debbie Ng, Executive Assistant to the Secretary.
Great. Barbara?
Barbara Schmertz, the Director of Research and Policy Analysis for MHEC.
Great. Lee?
Lee Towers, Executive Director of External Relations for MHEC.
Great. And Soma?
Good morning. Assistant Attorney General to MHEC. Legal
Great.
counsel.
And Trish?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Trish Gordon-McCown. I'm the Director of Academic Affairs at the Commission.
Great. And Melissa?
I'm an Education Policy Analyst at MHEC.
Great. So those are our MHEC folks. Why don't we start with Matt at MICUA?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. I'm Matt Power. I'm the president of MICUA. Good to see everybody.
Katie, over to you at St. Mary's.
Good morning, I'm Katie Gantz. I'm the Vice President for Academic Affairs and the Dean of Faculty at St. Mary's College of Maryland.
Great. Monica at MAC.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Monica Randall. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at MAC. It's good to see everyone.
Great. And Phyllis at Morgan.
Hi, I'm Phyllis Keyes. I'm the Vice President for Academic Affairs at Morgan State.
Great. And then we'll go over to our USM partners. We'll have Allison go last. How about Candace?
Morning, everybody. I'm Candace Carrico, the Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs.
Great. Nancy?
Hi, I'm Nancy Shapiro, Associate Vice Chancellor in Academic Affairs.
Great. And Allison, our newbie.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Allison Wren. I am the new Senior Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs, taking over for Joe Buffett, who retired. I have been here since mid-January. I come after spending most of my career in the California State University system as faculty and as an administrator, both on a campus and at the system level. So had lots of conversations with MHEC already and with a number of you, and look forward to our work together.
Great. Thank you. And I think we got everyone on the call. Lindsay Bates just showed up. She is one of our associate directors in academic affairs. So, okay, let's move on. Approval of meeting minutes. Everyone should have received that. We need to go for a vote. Any edits that need to be made to the meeting minutes? If not, a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
So move.
Great. A second.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Yep. All of our segment heads. Yep. Great. Okay. Approved. They are approved. Our next item is something we've talked about in past meetings around civic learning and democracy engagement. With Nancy's leadership, this has been a collaborative that has been growing over the past couple of years. You might remember, I believe it was the October segment meeting, we brought this before the segments to say, hey, as a state, we want to join this collaborative. USM has already joined the collaborative, but certainly we want to do it as a statewide initiative. We received formal communication in early January requesting Maryland to officially join. That kind of got lost in translation with the transition of governors and with Secretary Fielder's resignation. However, know that we, Maryland as a state, want to continue to be active in this collaborative with other states. And in fact, Nancy, Brad Phillips at MAC, and myself attended a nationwide convening that happened in College Park. When was that? March, right, Nancy? So,
yeah, that was March, right.
Yep. Last time we talked about this in October, there was a general agreement that Maryland participate in this collaborative. In light of the announcement of our new acting secretary from last week, this will probably be one of the first things we put on his agenda to formally work with the governor's office and put in a formal agreement into the collaborative to say Maryland as a state will be joining in this work and will participate in a variety of professional development, MHEC's role in terms of identifying coordinating roles and regulatory changes that promote civic engagement, and then what institutions can do individually. So I would have said things differently if we didn't have an acting secretary coming in, but now that we have an acting secretary that's pending in 3 weeks, like I said, this will be one of the first things that we bring up with him and get that ball rolling so that we just dot the I's and cross the T's on the officialness of Maryland as a state engaged in this collaborative. Nancy, do you have anything that you want to add?
Thanks, Emily. Only that Allison was also at the CLD
Oh, that's
meeting,
right. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. No, that's okay. It was her first toe dipping into that, representing Maryland. Yes, it is. There are a number of national associations and states who are joining officially as states through SHIO, as well as systems that are joining officially through NASH. So the goal of this initiative is to broadly accept higher ed's responsibility for educating for citizenship. And really as Emily described, once the new secretary comes on board, and ideally this will come through SEC as an approval that'll go to the commission, that'll go to the governor. And what that would mean is that we would be a state, one of the SHIO states that belongs to this coalition, Civic Learning and Democracy Engagement. At the moment, the only thing that is being asked of this state is to continue communication, which we're doing, to affirm, some intention of broadening civic engagement and civic participation across higher ed. And probably, it'll be up to MHEC to put together a representative group from the higher education community to be sort of a working group that can continue to be involved in the CLDE meetings and other things. So, and there'll be like a request for a point person, which could be Emily, could be, you know, anybody, could be me, could be one of you, as the person who would be the person who communicates generally with the MHEC office. So that's that. So I think, personally, I think it's a no-brainer. I think every state should sign up. And I think that the more we advocate for true civility, the protection of the democracy and the freedoms that we do as our public higher education mission, the more public we can be about that, the better. And it is a nonpartisan, it is really educating to preserve the democracy broadly. So I'm happy to answer questions. I've been working with them for quite a while.
Thank you, Nancy. Questions from anyone? Any concerns about this? More to come, but that is a priority to make that official. And like Nancy said, MHEC will take a coordinating role in this work, trying to convene either segmental representatives or even institutional representatives. I think a statewide convening, in the next 12 months would be great with the campuses and campus leadership. So this may be a bit of a slow burn, but we're absolutely worth the effort. And certainly recognizing that many of the Maryland campuses are already doing civic learning, democracy initiatives. So I don't think that we're engaging in something that is novel to Maryland. This is something that is already happening. Let's just try to maybe convene, learn best practices, identify what's working, what's not working.
That's it. Thanks, Emily.
Great, thank you. Okay, on to our next topic, the initial implementation plan to the Accountability and Implementation Board. Many of you saw a draft of this a few weeks ago. We submitted it to AIB on March 15th per the deadline. It's currently under review. I've said this before, but let me recenter ourselves around this topic. Higher ed plays a role with the blueprint implementation on kind of two main functions. One being teacher preparation, making sure that we are preparing teachers in a way that speaks to the diversity of the state, ensures that they are well qualified for the jobs that they teach in, including the auxiliary like speech pathologists, reading specialists, and the like. So teaching, educating the workforce, right? Teacher preparation program. So that's one. The second one is college readiness, and this idea that students are, and so the second idea kind of bifurcates into two relevant issues. One, the idea of college readiness, and then two, access to post-secondary college opportunities in high school if a student has, so things like dual enrollment is really the big thing. So we've included all of those elements in the current implementation plan. I know Nancy has been attending some of the AIB meetings. I've been attending them. The big topic right now that at least I'm engaged with is how AIB will measure these outcomes, what it will look like. And so that ranges from everything in the pre-K world up into college readiness, as well as the career pathway and the career ladder for teachers. So again, we play kind of those two sliver roles around college readiness and teacher preparation programs. So we haven't heard anything from the AIB on our plan. I am unclear about whether or not we will have institutions submit plans. We put in a line in our current, in the MHEC plan that we said, while MHEC is submitting this, this is not MHEC, this is a plan for higher education. And so I would hope that we can continue that so that it is a unified voice, but more to come on that front from AIB and seeing what kind of feedback they have. We will have to write another plan. This was an initial implementation plan. We will have to write another plan, I believe, next year, which would be a much longer runway on what we're doing. The last thing that I will say is the implementation plan does have a lot around scholarships and ways for, particularly for teacher preparation programs and in the context of the workforce. So I want to recognize Al and his work in trying to not only get information, but keep on top of particularly recent legislative changes in some of those teacher scholarships and what they look like. So Al has played a very critical role from the MHEC side on the implementation plan. So let me open that up for discussion, questions, comments on either AIB in general or the implementation plan and what that looks like in next steps.
So I just want to say that at the last meeting of that committee that Emily described, the outcomes committee, Emily represented higher education very well. There needs to be a higher education voice at that table, and it's been a little bit of a struggle to get that voice at the table. But I just want to thank Emily for being there, and I'll say, she's just been in touch with all of us continuously about this work. So thanks.
Yep. One of the things that I have been echoing, and so let me say this openly in case there needs to be discussion on this front, is this idea that we have one standard of college readiness. There's been a bit of back and forth. I think that is a philosophical element that I believe we all are in agreement on, but I think today's meeting is a perfect time to make sure that that is still the case, that either you are college ready or you're not college ready. It's not you're college ready for selective institutions or you're college ready for community colleges. Either you are college ready or you're not. Selective institutions can absolutely have additional admissions requirements. That is what makes them selective institutions, but we just need to have a consistent statewide standard of what it means to be college ready. So that's been kind of again, I think it's a philosophical statement to make. And let me just open that up for discussion and make sure that we are all on the same page and that is a universal comment. Yes, Allison.
Yeah, again, I haven't been as involved with this as so many of you have been, and I really appreciate all the work. I am fully on board with the notion that there's a standard for college readiness. And this is something we need to educate folks on. We need to educate our legislature. We need to educate our P through 20 or P through 12. Sorry, I always go K through 12 as an old school teacher. We need to educate people on this, that we accept students who meet a certain standard in our institutions, and then we support them. But they're college ready. And so it's not just a philosophical, it's a pragmatic standard. And we appreciate you, Emily, for holding to that. And we just need to all work together to educate everybody on this. They're not going to get it until we explain it to them. And we'll just keep doing that like you all have been doing. So I appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt?
I'll just quickly ditto both you and Allison. I mean, and again, it is beyond philosophical. The logic behind it is just impossible to argue with, which doesn't mean that it won't be argued with. But I think making sure we're repeating it and making sure our voice from higher ed is heard through the K-12 system, and we can agree with them on what that definition means is the most imperative. And I think we all recognize, given what we've already done, that is not going to be an easy lift, and we're all going to have to be united in it. And so we appreciate all your good work, and they're certainly supportive.
Thank you, Matt. Monica?
Yeah, I'd like to just ditto what everyone has said. And also how important it is to really talk about having that commonality through an equity lens. That is so important. And that's something that I think we could do to educate everyone about why that's so important to have that commonality. So thank you so much for pushing forward on that.
Thank you. Candace?
The other thing is that in the moment when we're having all of this transfer legislation and a push to assess whether our transfer ability is functioning well, if dual enrollment, I mean, Rachel Heiss's language was, this time she didn't say 4-year versus 2-year. She said, really what we're talking about is we're looking at a college readiness standard for any open access institution, whether 2-year or 4-year. And what does readiness mean for that first lowest level credit bearing course? And the whole way in which she framed it forgets that our whole state has been working really hard on transferability and to say gen ed is gen ed is gen ed, and it transfers everywhere to all of our public institutions. St. Mary's, Morgan, USM, community colleges, all of them. Gen ed is gen ed is gen ed, including when it's dual enrollment. And so I just think in this overall context, we have a split, and so we have to figure out how to get to AIB, because I think it's been very hard to get to MSDE. And thank you, Emily. I echo Nancy's thanks. You're fighting the good fight for us.
Thank you. Nancy?
Yes, to Candace's point, I was at that meeting that Emily was trying desperately to articulate the standard. And you could hear in what Candace just said, Rachel's misunderstanding. The lowest level gen ed course, as if there are gen ed courses, and then there are the other gen ed courses for the low level gen eds, whatever that. So it is like ingrained. It's very hard to change their minds. We all have to say the same thing. And unfortunately, saying it in the same words doesn't, people still don't get it. So it's going to be, as Matt said, it's going to be a struggle.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. Al?
Just kind of hitting off with what Monica said and Candace, that equity piece is real key right there. The aspect of seeing students that graduate with A and Bs from one type of district school not prepared for college because of the rigorous courses that they have, compared to other students going to a different high school and getting C's, but more prepared than the kids for the A's and B's. So, as much as we say MSDE, it's hard to kind of get them. I think we've got to find a way to really get them involved, because that equity piece is going to determine what college readiness really is for everyone.
Great. Thank you, Al. Okay, so I think we're all on the same page in the context of college readiness. Again, I don't want to lose sight that a second part of higher ed's role in the blueprint implementation is around teacher preparation programs. And again, some recent legislative changes around that we'll have to, around particularly scholarships, we'll have to pay attention to. Okay, so more to come on that. I'll keep everybody posted as that work continues, and we'll charge ahead. Any last comments on AIB? Nope. Okay. And we'll be better prepared for our next report. We'll have a much longer time to write that. So I'll probably be coming to everybody in the fall to start writing the next plan that we have to do. Okay. Next up is legislative wrap up. I think we just wanted to open, I think we're all kind of well versed on a variety of bills that passed or did not pass. And so this is just more of an open discussion at this point, unless Lee has something he wants to particularly highlight. Is there anything that we need to discuss as a segment-wide group around any legislative bills that are of particular note?
You might want to take a
And
look
Lee?
at House Bill 573, the access to health and mental health advisory committee establishment.
Right. Are you telling me that, Lee?
Yes.
Right. So there's a bill that passed that creates a new advisory council for the commission. If you're not aware, it's a mental health advisory council. Initially drafted, MHEC was supposed to staff it. It got amended so that the staffing circulates through all the various representatives. So we'll have to think through that. I think it'll be a topic that will go into more depth at our June segmental meeting and the organization and what that looks like. But please do take a look at that bill. There is a report attached to it, but only one report, and it would be due in December. But that advisory council would continue to live in existence, much like our faculty advisory council, the financial aid advisory council, so on and so forth, and really focused on access to mental health resources at our colleges and universities.
Can I ask one question on that, Emily?
Yeah.
And kudos to Lee for his amendments on the staffing. But that being said, will MHEC at least have a convening role, even if our groups are staffing? It'd be very helpful just as far as like coordinating getting the meetings on the calendar for the collective. Is that doable on y'all's end?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think that will have to be how it gets coordinated and bringing everybody together just on that administrative level. Absolutely. So more to come at the June meeting. We'll probably do the same thing where we ask segments to submit a representative, a name for representative, and we'll get meetings on the calendar and proceed that way. Any other bills worth noting or discussing as open discussion? We all dead from legislative session?
I mean, I think the EA awards, I don't know if you're getting that later, but obviously there's a role for this group in that as well, sort of advisory. So it'd be worth at least having on everyone's radar. I think it is on everyone's radar. But.
Right. And yeah, and we'll talk about it later on in the agenda today. Okay, going once on legislative changes, twice. Okay. One thing so next on our agenda is specific to legislative session, and two reports that have to come really through academic affairs. Let me start with the easier one on intrusive advising. It looks like we will have to survey institutions on this idea of on two topics, intrusive advising and wraparound services. I am meeting with the Faculty Advisory Council tomorrow to help get some prompts and questions and help us design the survey so that it's as easily digestible as possible and can give us the information to meet the mandated report. So know that will be forthcoming. Again, we'll do our typical send it to segment heads and you all distribute as you see fit. We will ask for one response from each institution. So we'll give the full survey. We'll give you a PDF so that institutions can work with whatever departments and offices internally to get the most detailed answer possible. We'll then compile all those responses and submit to the General Assembly, probably write a bit of an executive summary, and then submit to the General Assembly. So intrusive advising and wraparound services forthcoming. Barbara, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Did I miss anything? Barbara is kind of helping draft that and pull that together.
No, you did not miss any of the the key highlights of what we know at this point, right? We've just been handed this, and we'll actually be operating rather blind as we wait for the JCR to actually be published and finalized. So, but we have every assurance that it stayed the same,
right? The
prompt.
And so, yeah, so one of the things that we're trying to do, and we've been trying to do this over the past couple of years, is get these reports done sooner and not wait for the JCR to come out at the end of May or mid-May, end of May, early June. We lose 4, 5, 6 weeks in trying to gather information. So know that we're going to charge ahead and start drafting all of this with the potential that actually that gets deleted from the JCR request. So again, more to come in June, but if we can get our act together, we'd ideally like to get this out as soon as possible so that campuses can have the summer to respond. And as individuals take summer break, right? We know summer is a tricky time to collect these kinds of surveys from campuses. So we're trying to be sensitive to that as well. Okay. Anything on intrusive advising, wraparound services? Questions, comments, concerns? Put it on your radar that it's forthcoming. Nancy.
So I would just comment here that USM had a small grant from the Able Foundation and a project with Baltimore City to identify the kinds of interventions that are extent, that are in this new bill. And we did a small study of some institutions, but I have some really wonderful review of literature around the value of intrusive advising and that kind. So I will share that with Barbara so that as you can draw on the work that's already been done to both help shape the questions that you might want to ask, but also if in fact you have to write the final report, feel free to use whatever you need out of this, because we had a really good writer who helped us with this. So
thank you, Nancy. That will help a lot.
Good.
Thank you. Okay. The second report coming out of academic affairs is a much heavier hitter, in my opinion. It's around academic program review, and I think this is in response to the NCHEMS report that was presented earlier on in the session. We will, so this report, I believe, is included in the budget bill, so we know we're going to have to do this report. So this is a guaranteed, and I would like for us to get going on this as quickly as possible. I think MHEC should kind of take a lead in coordinating and convening everyone. So administratively, I was hoping we could have just an open discussion. So let me back up. The budget bill requires a report be submitted by segment leaders, including MHEC, comprised of a work group of USM, Morgan, St. Mary's, MICUA, and MAC, MHEC, and then two people from the House and 2 people from the Senate. So this will be a work group that has elected officials. So we need, so I will do the legwork to figure out who those elected officials will serve on the work group. There are 8 items that we have to address in this report, and they are detailed items, things around what kind of market, workforce market data does MHEC use in the program approval process. The objection process, what that looks like. So these are things that I believe we need to have open, thoughtful conversations to respond to in our report. In light of that, I think my recommendation would be that we just set up a time, a standing time, Thursday afternoons every 2 weeks from here until mid-September to have these open discussions. We'd have very specific agendas. We would have questions that we need to answer, and use that material, use those discussions to then write the report. That's how I would propose we proceed with addressing the request in the budget bill, but let me open that up for discussion and see how everybody feels about it. You're all in favor. Great. We're going to do it then. Thoughts? I mean, I think
not many other choices, right? I mean, that's about as good as we're going to get, and we all got to power through and do it. So, I mean, I'm certainly happy to concur with that.
Okay. So again, I think what I'm asking is everybody in agreement that we kind of pick a day. We do meet every two weeks because I think we need to have ongoing. I think this is just going to be a thing that we do for the next 2 to 3 months. And then use those discussions to write the report. Monica, thumbs up. Thank you. Okay. I was going to propose Thursday afternoons as a general, because then I'm going to go over to our elected officials and see if that works. Does that work, generally speaking, Thursday okay, Matt, you're like, no, not really.
It works as good as any, right? I mean, it'll vary. I think you just got to pick it and go.
Okay, pick it. Any other suggestions, comments, concerns, or thoughts on trying to get that rocking and rolling? And we probably won't start meeting until our new acting secretary settles for a minute. So we probably won't have the first meeting until late May. But at least I want to get that on the calendar, in the books, and move in sooner rather than later so that people can plan. And we know that summer vacations are going to get in the way, but we'll just have a steady meeting time. Okay. So general, okay. So more to come on that. But again, that'll be something that we'll want to get done sooner rather than later so that we have enough time in the fall to write the report, circulate the report, make sure everybody has time to review it, provide additional feedback, so on and so forth. It is a December 1st deadline. The other important element is it does withhold funding from all the segments. So ideally, I would like for us to be submitting the report before Thanksgiving so that does not put you all into, so I would want to then back that out. We have feedback by November 1st. That means we have to have a draft out by the beginning of October. And so that's why I want us to have the meetings done by over the summer so that we can write it month of September, out for circulation month of October, final feedback, and done before Thanksgiving. Okay. Okay. I think that's it for me and my updates. The last two items, I believe, are Al. So I am going to let Al take over.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Al.
Just a quick kind of overview of what we've been doing based off statute guidelines. Initial awarding for the Delegate Howard P. Rawlings program for the EEA awards for the upcoming 23-24 academic year has been completed as of Friday, April 14th. Based off the statute that came out prior year, we were required to notify all eligible applicants by April 15th, which is what we did. So I'll get into the numbers, but the final deadline for students to submit the requirement document is going to be May 15th, 2023, and we'll continue to award students as they submit their required documents. So a quick breakdown for the Educational Assistance Grant, a total of 39,650 students were awarded. Of that 39,000, 28,250 were our initial students, 11,400 were renewal students, for a total of $90,561,775. Now, just to give an example, we go off of a 3-year projection based off the percentage of students that canceled, declined, did not accept their award. So we actually over-award students knowing that about 60–70% of them are not going to accept. That way we get more students, as many students as possible that are going to receive these funds and accept those funds. So that's why you will see the numbers that ultimately will total higher than the 110 million that was actually allocated to us. It's really 112, but of that 112, 2 million goes over to the campus-based EAG fund. So really it comes down to 110 million to split up between our EA grant, Educational Assistance Grant, our Guaranteed Access Grant, and then our Next Generation, which we separate. So for the Guaranteed Access, we had a total of 3,579 students that were awarded in this initial process. 1,899 of them were initial students, 1,680 were renewal students, for a total of $55,819,700. And then we have our Next Generation Scholars, which a total of 94 students were initially awarded, 15 initial students, 79 renewal students. With the Next Generation, there has been some misses with the nonprofits of understanding, even though we've done trainings with them, along with MSDE, just the process of them uploading their 12th grade senior applications. They have not been doing, so we reached out to them, notified them, and we're hoping that they'll update if they do have any. But we also are looking at doing kind of another process where we'll more so utilize the MDCAP system from the initial beginning, in which students that are pre-qualified will actually create a MDCAPS ID, submit their documents through that, and then we'll have a record of all pre-qualified students so that when they do hit their senior year, and the nonprofit updates their list, just showing that they've been along with the program, those students will directly connect. So the push will be working with MSDE and getting nonprofits really to understand the process, which is, it's not really a hard process. I just see kind of with nonprofits kind of switching staff, certain things like that, there's a little gap that they're missing there. So I think we need to do more constant communication. But overall, $1,547,100 was awarded to those students. So in total for the EEA program, 43,223 students were awarded for a total of $147,928,575. And again, we'll continue to keep going. We'll look at what students actually cancel to look at what funds are remaining. And really, I'm hoping that if we exhaust all of the 110, that later on we can go out to DBM and request additional funds to award more students, because we have funds remaining in our NB need-based student financial assistance fund, NBSFAF. So any questions on current EEA awarding for the 23-24 academic year?
Al, can you just give a sense of, you said the 110 and 55 went to GA, so that's about half, right? So is that on par with prior years?
Yeah, it's definitely on par. I mean, when I do the breakdown, we've done about between 80 and 90 million between both GA and EA, with about kind of EA a little bit more, maybe about 50 million, the GA about 40 million. So it's been there. The big thing, as we talked, is going to be with the new legislation. I expect a huge increase for the upcoming 24-25 award year, because it won't just be high school students anymore. It will really be any and everyone up to the age of, I think they put the age up to 26. So you'll have individuals that went out of state for 2 years and are coming back in state because it was a high cost in state that now become eligible. You'll have individuals that just didn't go to school and now say they need to go to school. You'll have students that went to community college and weren't eligible for it, and now they're transferring and they are eligible for it. So I'm looking at really trying to do projections based off this year and last year and probably even 21-22, and really looking at moving those restrictions and how many students would have been eligible if those restrictions weren't there at that point in time. But of course, you also have the federal government changing with the student aid index from their expected family contribution, which is really key because right now they have 4 in the household as the maximum household. So before, where you had individuals that may have 7 or 8 in the household and they had a higher income, but they were still Pell eligible because of how many people in the household, now you're looking at a cutoff at 4. How does that really affect that student aid index eligibility? You know, the other key piece really that we kind of talked with legislation was the way that legislation is written will be updating the MDCAP system for the 24-25 academic year, which is going to be a cost. And then we'll have to turn around and update the system again for the 25-26 academic year, which is kind of going to be a duplicate cost. But, you know, we do what we have to do when we make it work for us. Did I answer your question, Matt? Okay, so if there's no other questions, I think, Emily, the next one is Conroy and Cryer. For Conroy and Cryer, for the FY23, we had a $3 million allocation. The way that Conroy and Cryer has been previously run, from my understanding, because Conroy and Cryer has no maximum amount on the allocation to institutions, basically institutions award, and then we receive invoices for those awards. So it was a dramatic increase for this current fall semester that just passed. Now, based off how it was done before, With that 3,435,000 came out of that 3 million from the beginning for us to pay some prior institutions, really one institution, Towson University, from the spring 22 semester, which left us with about 2.56 million. For the fall semester, fall 22, we had about 3.3 million, a little bit over invoiced. So that immediately left us with a deficit of 780,000. Not including that we don't have any funds available for this current spring semester as well. We did do a budget deficiency request with DBM for 3.5 million. Looking at that 3.3 million that was done in the fall, plus to make up any winter or anything and the deficit from the fall to cover that. So that has been approved. At this point in time, we're waiting for further instructions how to really get that money available so that we can start paying out these invoices. And I'm hoping that by the time we pay out that money, then we'll be done 23-20 or 22-23, where we won't have any leftover balances from prior semesters. We also put out to DBM that we requested additional funds for this upcoming FY24. So we've been approved for 7 million. So I'm hoping that that 7 million will cover everyone. But with legislation that passed last year, they did add proprietary schools as eligible to participate in the Convoy and Crier. So I don't know if that's going to still cause us to go beyond. Biggest thing really is it's not like our regular programs where we kind of set an allocation to each institution. So really, they're just going through, and anyone who's eligible, they're awarding those individuals. So we don't really know the numbers until we get that first invoice. Any questions there?
Well, just first, thank you. I think I put this on the agenda because I had a few folks who were asking about it. So I appreciate the explanation, and I presume it's safe that I can tell our folks, you've been made whole. You're waiting on the deficiency to come through and be appropriated. And at that point, we expect everyone to be fully reimbursed for the current fiscal year, and you're well positioned for next year as well. Is that a fair? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you very much for all that. Really helpful.
No problem at all. No problem at all. So I'll pass it back over to you, Emily, if there are no additional questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Al? I feel like Al always has a busy season, but it's different busy seasons for different reasons. So I recognize that this is one of his busy seasons with awarding and trying to get that done in advance of next year. Candace.
I just wanted to say thanks to Al. He's been really helpful with our financial aid directors, and just appreciate his help. Thanks, Al.
Thank you.
Yeah. We were sad to see Donna go, but I feel like Al has been here forever, even though it's only been, what, 6 months, right? Like, not even, maybe 6 months?
I've got about 8 now, August till about 8.
There we go. And he survived his first legislative session, so.
I did.
Only a few scars, right?
I just have to survive the aftermath of getting the programs ready.
Right. Thank you, Al. Okay, last 2 items on the agenda. Any member updates? Anybody want to report anything from the group? New initiatives? New things going on?
I would just give a collective thanks to everyone throughout session. I found it really collaborative to be back, working with MAC, working with USM, working with the campuses. I'm extremely thankful for that and appreciative. And I think all things considered, we had a very successful legislative session for higher ed in a very odd legislative session. So thank you to everybody.
Candace?
Just a small thing. Typically, there's an enrollment management professionals day that takes place once a year. It used to be called Transfer Professionals Day. And just with all the turnover in our unit, like 100% turnover, we're going to do it in the fall. And so I'm going to reach out to the different segments and maybe we can plan it together. But we were looking at doing it one day in Ocean City from like 10:30 to 4, just because the next day we might do our USM retreat. So if that's going to be so we wanted to start it late enough people could travel there. And we might have some Zoom, but we really want to focus it on being in person for the first time in a few years, and trying to think of agenda items that will be good to be done in person as opposed to remote. So just wanted to give you guys that update, and I'll be reaching out to your staff about planning that. Thanks.
Thanks, Candace. Allison?
I don't know how to lower my hand on this machine. I'm like, I open this up, I'm like, it's not Zoom, it's not. I'm good. I just want to thank folks who I've had the opportunity to meet. You've all been so collegial, and I've appreciated getting to know you and starting this work. Again, California does not have a coordinating board, and so this is new for me. They had one, they just defunded it. So I guess they still have one, it just has no money and doesn't do anything. And so I appreciate this and bring a different perspective. I'm really looking forward to the work that's going to be done on the academic program review group. Candace will represent us on that. We need to start focusing on our students. I know we represent institutions, and that is a long-standing care of ours, but we cannot do things that are slowing down our students because that's what's important to the state. And I think that's what the legislature is reacting to, as well as the public, is this fierce protection of our institutions, which, again, I will fiercely protect our institutions, but I think our students are the key here. And I think one of the examples from the legislative session is the transcript of Golden Bill, which passed. That, from an institutional perspective, we were fierce about that. No, wait a minute, they have to pay their bills. So they do have to pay their bills. I told the students that this weekend, but they need their transcripts to pay their bills. They need to get that job. They need to go to grad school. So that's a student-focused perspective. So I hope we can work together on protecting our students as well as our institutions. And I know from just talking to y'all, you believe in that too. So looking forward to this work. I know it'll be hard, and Emily, thank goodness you're an organized person, because this is a lot of stuff going on. So appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Anything else from the group?
Just one quick question, Emily. I didn't see in the press release, but you mentioned 3 weeks for the acting secretary. Are there any sort of other updates along those lines for us from MEMAC?
No, we know that he'll start May 3rd, and we'll probably. So I think we're trying to discuss internally what makes the most sense in terms of onboarding, both just internal activities as well as external activities. I have a call scheduled with him for 9:30 tomorrow morning, so I'll have some initial discussions on what that looks like from academic affairs side of things. We'll have to definitely get him caught up with Al and Jeff on what you've all heard me say, the money stuff. So more to come. It is my intent that we'll get him set up with everybody here on this call to have either one-on-ones. Maybe we'll do an impromptu segmental meeting just for some introductions. So I'll have a better sense of that maybe after I talk with him tomorrow, and see what his first week looks like, his first 4 weeks, and the first 3 months. That's kind of how I've been organizing it. His first week, first 4 weeks, and then first 3 months. So more to come. If there are any recommendations, suggestions, again, I'm sure you all want to sit with him, have some conversations. We'll get that set up sooner rather than later, so that and I do think he'll want to visit with campuses, visit with presidents, get a lay of the land statewide. So I don't know that for sure. He has not said that to me, but I imagine that'll be something he'll want to do. So we'll coordinate all that and reach out to you as segment heads, see what role you want to play in those kinds of visits and those conversations, and go from there.
Emily, do you want us then to wait instead of reaching out to him to schedule a meeting? You want me to wait until you're ready to reach out to me for a meeting?
I would say so. Why don't we do that? That way I then get in trouble for advising you all to just wait. But I think that's probably the most organized way to do this.
And the chancellor might reach out separately. That's his business, but I will wait for you. I'm okay with that. I know this person's going to be inundated and I don't want to add to the misery. So,
perfect. That would be great if everybody, yeah. Candace?
I don't know if it's of any help to him, and certainly he knows, you know, the MAC boards and all that kind of thing, but we might go back to some of our boards or chiefs. I don't know if it would help him to meet with a group at once, like to meet with like the MICUA board or the CUSP or something like that. You know, I don't know.
That's a great suggestion. I'll offer that up and see what he wants to do. Yeah.
We're meeting May 4th if he wants to jump in quick, Emily.
Okay, that's good. Is it, when you say we, is it your president?
Yeah, the entire board is meeting May 4th in Annapolis. So if he really wants to just jump in, we would love to have him.
Why don't you go ahead and pencil him in?
Okay.
And we'll put that in as a draft option. So Annapolis, do you know the time?
Yeah, 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
9 o'clock, sorry, 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. Is anybody else having meetings that we should get on his calendar sooner rather than later? Upcoming meetings? And you don't have to answer that now, but email me, email either me or Debbie. And we'll make sure that it's a consideration as we're planning out the first few months. So Allison, if you are having president's meetings planned, if there's something, let us know. Monica, same thing.
Yeah, we'll do that. Definitely. Thanks.
Okay. And that way we can fit him into your existing calendars. Phyllis, Katie, let us know. You know, we can reach out to you both separately and do kind of independent, individual, one-off meetings with your presidents and see what makes sense.
Thanks very much. That's great.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we're excited to have an acting secretary. 3 months without one. I know by the time May rolls around, it'll be 4 months. So it'll be good, and but a lot to do to get things organized. Okay, Monica.
So I'm just bringing this up. I'm kind of switching gears a little bit. I'm bringing this up only because all of the people on this report are right now on my screen, and that is the lead author was to be determined. It was the report on the cannabis industry, JCR, that one. Report on programs to foster equitable growth in the cannabis industry. And I was just wondering, because the lead author is to be determined, what does that look like? What does that mean? We're all listed there, but I was just curious.
Lee, do you have any insight on that?
No, I do not.
And Monica, I'll be honest, I am not familiar with that report, so I'll have to reread it as a potential. Can you actually send me the language, or Lee, or I'll follow up with Lee. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll follow up with Lee.
It will be no problem for me. Just cut and paste and send it to you. So no big deal. Okay.
Mm-hmm. That'd be great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So more to come. I guess we'll find out. But good to know that that is on your radar and trying to figure out how that's all going to work. Now, if I remember correctly, did they finally? I know there was some back and forth about the Cannabis Commission and whether or not it was going to go under what is it, alcohol, firearms, and tobacco. Are they now? Is medical cannabis still Medical Cannabis Commission, but recreational is under something else? Does anybody know? Because I would imagine whatever the legislature decided on that kind of organization, they would take a lead, but maybe not.
Hi, this is Jontel speaking. From my understanding, they've done it as a separate commission. They're not putting it with alcohol and tobacco, and they're not separating out medical. They're encouraging those with medical licenses to be first in line to apply to the new updated licensure. And a lot of power has been given to this new commissioner to kind of craft more of the regulations around how this is going to go. But that's to the extent of what I know about it.
That's helpful. Thank you, Jontel. and you weren't here at the beginning. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Oh, sure. Hello. Yeah, sorry, I came in a little bit, a few minutes late, but John Toe Green. I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs with Maryland Association of Community Colleges. My first time joining a segment advisory meeting, so nice to meet everyone. Nice to see everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll look into it, Monica, and if we can all just stay in touch and figure out how that's all going to work. If somebody hears something, we all just kind of keep each other informed.
And just one piece, we're not in that report, but just one piece of context. I mean, there's just a lot of debate and discussion sort of in the hallways mostly over how higher ed would support either through curriculum or, all types of different ways, what it means for higher education to have a legal market, and so what that would look like and how we could be supportive. So I think that's sort of the background. It wasn't worth a bill, but it was worth popping in there. So.
Yep. So I will say, so from a statewide perspective, we have two formal degree programs in the cannabis world. We have one at UMB in the pharmacy, School of Pharmacy. It's I believe it's a master's, and it's intended for healthcare professionals so that they're well versed in kind of the science of cannabis and the background of cannabis, so that if you are working with a patient who is using cannabis, they have a background in it and they understand the medical and science behind it. So that's one program at UMB. Then there's a post-baccalaureate certificate, I believe. It's graduate at Maryland, MUIH, Maryland University of Integrative Health. They are a kind of novel university. They are, they do massage therapy, alternative health programs. So they are tackling cannabis training from that perspective, from a perspective of acupuncture and alternative medicine, and again, from a science perspective, but in that context of the health field. So we have those two formal degrees that exist in Maryland. My understanding, the UMB program is an online program, and it is massive. They have way more student enrollment than they ever expected, because they're kind of outreaching to a national landscape of health professionals. So pretty strong program at UMB. MUIH's program is in person. It's still fairly strong, but in person and far more local to Maryland. I do believe, however, we have seen a few on the continuing ed. Oh, thank you, Candace, for the correction. UMB's program is hybrid at Shady Grove. Thank you, Candace. We have seen a few continuing ed programs at the community colleges for dispensary professionals. They're not as extensive as a full degree, but they are providing individuals some initial education around cannabis and the context in a dispensary. I believe that's the case, Monica. I want to say I've seen one or two come through on the continuing ed side. So there is some activity around this. When UMB was the first proposal that came to MHEC around cannabis. We had several conversations with Department of Education where we were concerned about students being able to use or not use either federal funding, work study, because it's still not legal at the federal level, we don't want to have our students at risk. We've landed with, as long as it's a textbook curriculum, they're not touching it, they're not growing it, that it's still legal, right? You're getting just a scholarly education around cannabis. That, I think, is going to change as time progresses, particularly now that Maryland has growers licenses. It's going to change. So we're trying to keep an eye on it. I had some conversations about 2 years ago with the Medical Cannabis Commission about all of this, because they were struggling with how to make sure owners and operators had the right credentials. They knew what they were doing. They were hiring dispensary people who had, right? In some ways, the dispensary people are pharmacists, right? You're going in and you're purchasing a product that is for medical use. So they were struggling on how that would all work, knowing that this recreational was coming down the pike. So I've taken it so I can make sure we do another introduction with whatever the new organization will be that oversees all of this, and see how we can tie in some of that workforce need. But that's just some of my knowledge around what's happening statewide and the cannabis workforce community. So Monica, thank you for bringing that up. Matt, thanks for sharing what you did, and Jontel for the background.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Going once, twice? Okay, when is our next meeting? It's sometime in June. Debbie, do you know off the top of your head? Or is it
It's going to be on June 12th.
June 12th. Okay. So June 12th, again, we might have just a very initial introductory meeting with the new acting secretary potentially beforehand. Probably nothing of substance, but just some introductions. But we'll see what he wants to do. Otherwise, we'll reconvene on June 12th and talk then. Lots coming in the meantime, so we'll be in touch.
Thank
you,
you,
everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Take care. Bye-bye.